Hello, I'm Martin Oates. Coming up on the Sunday Politics in the South West. Fury at the prospect of the region not getting the high-speed broadband promised by the government.
BT are asking for an extra £35 million. They're asking for 3 years longer to deliver the broadband, most of which they should have delivered by 2016. What sort of deal is that, Minister? It is no sort of deal whatsoever.
And for the next 20 minutes, I'm joined by Clare Moody, Labour MEP for the South West, and Scott Mann, Conservative MP for North Cornwall. Welcome back to both of you. Now, on Thursday, the Transport Secretary admitted the government's £38 billion project to upgrade the railways is in trouble. He criticised Network Rail for letting costs spiral and deadlines slip.
I do not pretend that everything is perfect, because it isn't. Where performance has fallen below the standards I expect, I want that sorted out.
And this comes just a week after we learned plans to provide brand new intercity trains for the South West have also been delayed. Scott, I mean, a few things at the moment could be more important to the South West than rail links.
Absolutely.
This looks as if it's turning into a bit of a mess, doesn't it?
Well, look, we saw through the Dawlish disaster, you know, with the collapse of the rail track, that we need a second alternative to Dawlish, and that became very apparent with some of the tourism reductions that we saw within the South West. We need to push as hard as we can with Network Rail to make sure we get value for money.
What one rail analyst said this morning, we're in a situation now where major electrification projects for the north of England, which we know is important to the government, the Northern Powerhouse and the rest of it, are being paused, don't know for how long. He's saying if there are these new financial constraints and big projects like that could be going out of the window, how likely is the government's going to proceed with an extra line on the south coast of...
Well, look, let's be honest, we've got a lot of Conservative MPs in the South West now. So we've got a negotiating position where we can go into the government and say, look, this is important to the people that live in the South West, and we must ensure that we are treated in the same way as the rest of the country. And we always, there have been situations in the past where we haven't had that negotiation point, but I think it is important. You know, we see all the stuff going on in the north, and of course that's important.
HS2, of course, is still continuing.
Yes, of course. But the
What's
South
your
West,
view on that?
Well,
That's not being affected by any of these cutbacks, is it?
We want our HS4, Martin. We want a high-speed rail right into the South West. That'd be fantastic for us in the future. But we have to ensure that we get a fairer deal around the table.
Clare, Labour have been questioning, I think, when the government knew that these problems were looming.
Absolutely.
And whether, in fact, it was in time enough maybe to have flagged that before the election.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, Michael Dagger, our Shadow Transport spokesperson and Minister, has been saying exactly that, from everything that's been indicated, two things. One is that it seems the government should have known well in advance of the general election, but were making all those promises before the election, knowing full well the problems that were sitting in Network Rail right now, at that time. And the second thing is that it is, you know, the investment in the infrastructure. They talked about the Northern Powerhouse, all of this and this electrification. I hope Scott's right. I hope that the Tory MPs in the region will be able to put pressure on the government. I'm afraid that with the coalition, there were Tory and Lib Dem MPs. When there was a Tory and Lib Dem government, we didn't see the investment that we wanted, we needed badly then. So I hope my pessimism is proved wrong, but I am concerned that we won't get the delivery.
OK. Now, from one infrastructure project in trouble to another. A deal between BT and Devon and Somerset County Councils to provide 95% of the counties with high-speed broadband by the end of 2017 has collapsed. The councils said what BT was offering simply wouldn't have delivered that target, which, awkwardly for the politicians, is a government pledge. This report from John Danks and the discussion which follows were recorded just before those talks broke down on Friday afternoon.
Connecting to the internet in rural areas can still be difficult. The coalition allocated £730 million towards the rollout of superfast broadband to homes and businesses. After the election, the Conservatives pledged that rural Britain would have near-universal superfast broadband in 5 years' time. Well, the rollout of superfast broadband here in Devon has been anything but smooth. Along with Somerset, it's the last county to sign the latest deal with BT to ensure that 95% of people have access to superfast broadband by the year 2017. Meanwhile, some people here in East Devon feel they've been left off the broadband map. In the village of Opottery, nothing moves very fast, and that goes for the internet too. This green cabinet delivers broadband, but not of the super-fast variety. Download speeds vary from 6 megabits per second to less than 1, depending on the distance of homes from this box.
There's a lot of people running businesses here. It is a real struggle. The service can be unreliable. It seems very unfair when, as council taxpayers, we've paid into East Devon Council to pay for the rollout of the high-speed broadband programme, yet we've been told we're out of programme and we have no idea when things will improve.
Opottery has missed out on phase 1 of the superfast broadband rollout. People here will be watching with interest to see if they'll benefit from the next phase of the project. BT wasn't able to tell us how many homes have been connected, but said it was on target to deliver around 90% by the end of 2016. The deadline for a new contract to deliver phase 2 of the project, to connect 95% of homes and businesses by 2017, is Tuesday. And all week, the pressure between councils and BT has been mounting.
We are being held to ransom for the simple reason that we have state aid rules that only last, the waiving of them, until the end of this month, a few more days, and they're putting the gun to the head of Devon and Somerset, saying if you don't sign, you'll be outside of the state aid rules, and what will happen then?
The campaigners are equally frustrated.
We could be waiting to 2017 and beyond and still not know what, if anything, or when we're going to get it. And that gives enough problems for private individuals, but think what that means for businesses.
So the road ahead may be unclear, but until a deal on extending the rollout of superfast broadband is done, internet speeds in rural areas like this will, it seems, remain on the slow side.
We're joined now from Exeter by Councillor Rick Pallister, the leader of South Somerset District Council, one of the councils very much involved in this discussion process. Now, I understand you've announced as a council that you won't be making, I think it's a contribution of £600,000 plus to this deal unless you're convinced you're getting value for money.
Absolutely. We are not for one moment saying that that 640,000 isn't available. It is. It's available when somebody can tell us exactly what it's going to be used for and how the businesses in particular in South Somerset will benefit.
And presumably that means a guarantee that these targets will be reached.
Absolutely. I can understand that it may not be possible to go for an absolute guarantee, and I don't think we'd hold somebody to an exact number, but we've got to have something that we can measure. Otherwise the public, I think, would be justifiably furious if we parted company with all that amount of public money and had absolutely no idea what was going to be delivered for it, nor even that there was any redress if it wasn't delivered.
So how much slippage would you accept then if you say you wouldn't hold them literally to the targets?
The point is we try to get from 90 to 95%. Now, if somebody came back and said it's 94.3 for South Somerset and Taunton Dean's going to be a fraction over that, I don't think we'd be splitting hairs on it, providing our businesses, because our focus is on businesses and not households. As a district council, economic development is what driving us, and it's our rural businesses and even our businesses on the business parks in the towns who are not yet properly served. Only when they are satisfied will we be satisfied.
And have you got any sense as to how far we are from achieving those targets as the negotiations are?
Well, as far as I can tell, those negotiations are literally going on as we speak and probably will go on to the last minute. I think the bit that most of us are struggling to understand is they haven't finished phase 1, they haven't adequately demonstrated exactly what we're getting in phase 1, and they're asking us to put our money on the table, in fact, for them to bank our cheque now, when it's likely to be 2016, 17 plus, before this extra 5% comes into play.
OK, Rick, you're a Lib Dem councillor agreeing there with Conservative MP Neil Parish. I want to bring another Conservative MP, Scott Mann. And really, this is akin, isn't it, to the point that was made about rail. The EFRA Select Committee took evidence from BT months before the election saying this project was slipping, but the government still ploughed ahead and said, no, we can provide that, don't worry. Now it's unravelling, isn't it?
I think the thing that I find very difficult is that BT seem to do all the easy legwork in the major towns and the farming, in the market towns, but aren't able to do that final connection into the final mile. And it's very similar actually to my old job in the Royal Mail. You know, the universal service right across the board is important. And if we're going to promote North Cornwall and Devon and Somerset as places to do business in the West Country, it's important that BT get on with the job and deliver on what they're supposed to deliver on.
Well, you say BT is supposed to deliver it. This is a government pledge, isn't it? They're in negotiations with a private company. In those negotiations, the company makes a deal, doesn't it? But BT can't be forced. The problem is the government, your government, has tied itself to this and said, we will deliver this.
Well, maybe we should have done a deal with more than one contractor. You know,
you're not the first person to say that.
Choice within the market is always better than having one option. It's very similar to the council outsourcing work to Cormac. You know, if you've got one contractor in the market, you don't tend to get value for money.
Clare, Labour before the election, you two were saying by the end of this Parliament, by the end of the decade, there would be 100% coverage. It's easy to say that, isn't it? But looking at where we are now.
I think it's, firstly, what I want to say, completely echoing what Rick said in terms of the importance of this. You know, we were just talking about the railway access trains down through to the southwest, and broadband is our HS2. This is what, you know, we desperately need this to make sure that we have got a growing businesses in the region, that we've got jobs in the region for young people to stay, you know, to stay and work in the region rather than feeling the need to leave. So broadband is hugely vital to the region. But if you contrast the kind of what's been happening in Cornwall with what's been happening in Devon, and this particular project in Devon and Somerset just seems to have been plagued with problems.
You will know very well as an MEP, though, that Cornwall gets an awful lot of money from the European Union to help the process along, which Devon and Somerset don't.
Yeah, and that's great, and I'm very glad that Cornwall does, and the significance of that. But what I'm saying is that shows the difference that there is. Whereas the Devon and Somerset project, you know, the people have been trying to find out the information, those that are excluded. Prices have been quoted for putting households onto the broadband, getting the fibre to the broadband to their areas, of costs that are higher than laying fibre across the Pacific, the ocean bed under the Pacific. So, you know, this is, you know, there are huge problems with this. As you said, these were highlighted. That hearing was it was earlier in the year at least, it may have been even last autumn.
But how would Labour have done a better job? Because you were pledging the same rather grand promise as the Conservatives.
By actually looking at what had worked in Cornwall, and I think
without the money, though, I suspect if you said to BT, you can have, you know, considerably more money to do this, they'd probably be back with their tails wagging, saying you can do it.
But also, because I met with the superfast broadband people last week as well, and particularly around you, sort of obviously trying to get and keep jobs in Cornwall. And part of the conversation was actually they have a very different relationship. It's a much more open relationship between BT and Cornwall Council, and it's much more of a partnership relationship than the one that is self-evidently the case in Devon and Somerset, and I think that's helped make it
very,
work
very quickly.
better.
I was just going to say, we've still got not spots in North Cornwall as well.
I thought you might say that.
It's not perfect, but it is better, you've got to admit.
Thank you very much for joining us, Sir Rick. Now, councils in Devon are once again beginning the difficult process of finding sites for gypsies and travellers. They're working towards a new target of 135 pitches over the next 20 years. Last week, councillors in East Devon approved a plan to provide their share of them. Jenny Coomer reports.
It took Teignbridge District Council more than a decade to close down this unauthorised site near Exeter. They opened this official one next door with room for 15 pitches. Local authorities across the region have long struggled with the contentious issue of gypsy and traveller provision. But the need for pitches isn't going away. According to the latest gypsy and traveller accommodation assessment commissioned by Devon councils, the county needs 135 more permanent pitches over the next 20 years. There are currently 152 authorised pitches, and over the last 3 years, councils say there have been 145 unauthorised encampments across the county. The new town of Cranbrook in East Devon could be where some of the new official pitches go. Over the next 20 years, 37 pitches are needed across East Devon. The District Council has recently announced how it can deliver them. But what's come as a surprise to many living here in Cranbrook is that the District Council thinks that as this new town expands, it's an obvious location for a gypsy and traveller site. The chair of the recently formed parish council here admits there has been some negative reaction to the news on social media.
But I think it's been without knowledge of the facts. And the facts are that the pitches certainly have to be provided, but there is, at this stage, no suggestion that the pitches would be within the existing Cranbrook town area.
Within the gypsy community, there are concerns that historic prejudice will mean that councils will continue to fail to deliver the number of pitches that are needed.
I think there is pressure on councils to deliver, but there's even bigger pressure on councils from local people not to provide, and that's the sad fact.
It was so unbelievable.
Elizabeth works for the Plymouth and Devon Race Equality Council. This week she's been raising awareness in schools about the killing of gypsies during the Holocaust.
And they had their heads shaved. They were then stripped naked, men, women and children together.
A recent survey of gypsy and travellers in Devon found that 1 in 5 had experienced racism. Elizabeth feels education is key to tackling people's fears, but finds that local MPs like Gary Streeter are not helping to change attitudes.
It's not that they've chosen a nomadic lifestyle, it's when they arrive, it's their behaviour in terms of their disruption to the local community. And I haven't yet met a serving police officer who doesn't say that when they are in town, there is a spike in local crime.
If MPs can make derogatory, inflammatory comments about gypsies, then people watching that, people reading that, will make inflammatory, derogatory comments as well.
Back in East Devon, the District Council insists they'll deliver the pitches that are needed. The authorities putting aside £500,000 to buy land and run sites, which they say will return a profit.
We can. There's a determination to do it. It'll probably be a challenge, but we're determined to do that. We will have the necessary discussions with landowners and the gypsy and traveller community, make sure they're in the right place.
This week, East Devon Council said very few people had commented on its plans so far. That may change when the exact locations of the pitches are proposed.
Claire, the last Labour government wrestled with this fairly unsuccessfully, I think, in terms of the final result. The fact that this government's doing the same thing indicates that. What's the way forward, do you think?
I think I'm very pleased to hear that it looks like Devon are looking to find a solution, at least to find some pitches in their plan. It is consultation with the traveller community themselves where the pitches are most suitable, and then if they are, if they're able then to continue with identifying the right sites in the right areas in Devon, following through on the plan.
That's always the tricky bit, isn't it? I think this stage of the process doesn't attract many objections. It's when you identify a specific site.
Yes, yeah, but then they have to find those sites. Those sites have to be put in place if they're working with the community. As you say, we did put legislation in place around this in 2004. This has enabled what Devon are doing, and then it will be local consultations and actually also dealing with some of the myths. I do think that Gary Streeter was irresponsible in some of the things he was saying in the House.
He received a lot of criticism when we had him on at the time, and he expected that. He's said similar things before. Scott, Gary Streeter and a number of other Conservative MPs have gone on the record actually don't think it's the state or the local authority's job to provide pitches for travellers. What's your view?
Well, we sat on Cornwall Council discussing this. I think they produced a document back in 2013 which has been amended over time. And you highlighted the problem. The difficulty is getting farmers to sign up to specific pitches, and that's where the break in the chain is. That's the one area we need to address to be able to deliver sites. And if you don't deliver sites, then you have illegal sites, and that's where the problem comes in.
OK, well, it's time now for a regular roundup of the political week in just 60 seconds. As a 101 call is kept on hold for more than 90 minutes, Devon and Cornwall's Police Commissioner says the force must do better.
The progress is still not acceptable. The waiting time is far too long.
Is this sign on the M5 luring tourists into northern Devon and Cornwall at the expense of the south? Southern politicians and business people say it's unfair. Anger from community volunteers who answered cash-strapped Devon County Council's call to help tidy up road verges, and then got a bill from the council for disposing of the waste.
And the County Council are charging us for the privilege of dumping the waste that they should be dumping in the first place.
And Penzance's Pirate Festival should continue, says the Town Council, despite an in-house report describing last year's 300% overspend as a serious failure of financial management of public money. Scott, it's not a very big society, is it, to have these volunteers helping to clear up the road verges and then give them a bill, essentially? It's not happening in Cornwall.
I find that very frustrating. I think that's just a contract discussion that needs to be had. I think disposing of green waste is relatively simple, and it's just I think that's quite a simple solution for that particular thing.
Claire, should volunteers be called upon to do this anyway?
Well, no. It should be part of the maintenance work of a council. But your
about
point
how that's funded.
Yes. Yeah, they certainly, if they are called upon, shouldn't find themselves then out of pocket for doing the right thing by their community. I don't know what's behind or underneath this story, if there's any more detail around it, but clearly these people were doing the right thing by their community, and they shouldn't be held, penalised for that.
And just on this story about the signs, we've got the MP who represents Bodmin. Presumably you think signs that lure people towards Bodmin and any Weybridge where you live is a good thing.
Martin, as far as I'm concerned, they can put as many signs as they want. We want more people to flock into Cornwall, spend their money in our tourism industry, so let's have as many signs as we can get to encourage people to come down and see us.
OK, I'll leave you with that now. Back to Andrew.